If you're looking for the ultimate in dry fly strikes from our interior stillwater trout, then this is a pattern for you. Hey, it's Casey at Sea Run Fly and Tackle, and today I'm going to show you how to tie the Mikulak Sedge. Alright, so for the Mikulak Sedge, I have an Ahrex FW 531 in a size 8. And this is a barbless sedge dry fly hook. For thread, I'm going to use UTC 140 in light olive. You can use a different color depending on the body color that you're going to tie. I'll tie this quite often in olive, gray, and tan shades. So just thread color to match the body. So we'll tie in our thread. And just lay down a little bit for a foundation. And I always use a little bit heavier thread when I'm working with deer hair, just so that it doesn't cut into the material or cut into the hollow deer hair fibers and actually cut the fibers. Also, we tend to pull on deer hair a little harder than a lot of other materials, so using a finer thread can break it a little bit easier. So for the tail and the wing in this fly, I'm going to use Wapsi deer hair body in natural brown. And this is a little bit on the grayer side, actually, as far as some of the natural brown comes out. Just deer being a natural animal, colors vary a little bit. And I like a little bit on the grayer side. Not to say that the browner shades won't work, just my personal preference. So if you've never worked with deer hair, comes on a thick piece of hide here, and you can see all this fluffy under fur here. This is part of the insulating properties of deer hair. So depending on how far or how cold it is when this deer is harvested will depend on how much under fur is in here. And we're going to want to pick this out. But so I'm just going to take a clump, cut it as close to the hide as I can with my scissors. And now, always good to take a little more than not enough. I mean, you can always add a little bit, but you're gonna lose some of the deer hair while we're cleaning this out. Some of the shorter strands will come out, broken strands, that sort of thing. But we're just trying to work out as much of that fluffy under fur as we can, because that stuff will absorb water. And a fly or material that absorbs water when we want it to float on the surface doesn't help the cause. I'm going to work it from both sides. And you can see that clump has reduced quite a bit in size. Now, deer hair, the tips are naturally uneven. To even these things up for a fly tying purpose, I'm going to take a hair stacker, a 2-piece tool here that just helps us line up the tips on these on this material. So I'm just going to tap that in. A few taps on my tying table, and now you can see those tips are nice and uniform. I'll grab them. If there's any that are sticking out more than the others or any broken tips in there, you can pull them out. If you handle this too much, it will misalign those tips again, but a couple of taps back in that hair stacker will fix it all up for you. So that first clump I'm going to tie in just past the bend of the hook here. And that's going to be our first section, or the tail section of our sedge. So I'm just going to do a couple of loose wraps just to kind of contain the material, and then I'll start pulling a little bit tighter. You can see that flares out a little bit. If I crank it tight right off the bat, that rear section is going to flare right out too, and I don't really want that with this pattern. Different story for spinning deer hair. So we're going to trim this down. going to trim this down. And then I'm just going to wrap over this just to secure this in place to keep it from spinning. Now for the body, I'm just going to use some Wapsi Superfine dry fly dubbing. This one is blue winged olive. I just like that olive shade. Like I said, you can also do it in tan, gray, and other variations as well, just to match the naturals that are coming off the water. So we're just going to spin this onto the thread. Making a nice tight dubbing noodle, again, just so that it doesn't hold too much water. And we're going to dub over the butts that we tied off. Now basically going to repeat the process that I just did for the tail section. I'm going to take another clump of deer hair, I'm going to stack it, and we're going to start building the wing. So we'll tie that first wing clump in about the same length as the tail. If it's a tiny bit shorter, tiny bit longer, it's not really the end of the world. It's really the profile that we're looking for. And we'll trim that all away. Now the hard part is not cutting your thread off when you're doing this. And then we'll repeat the process with the dubbing. And we're going to do this for 3 wing sections. Dub over those butts. Clean another section of deer hair, stack it, and tie it in again. A little bit more of our dubbing. we'll clean up our last clump of deer hair. And now with this section, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're just going to extend the butts past the eye a little bit, and this will help push a little bit of water while we're retrieving this fly. If you ever see the natural insect on the water leaving a big V wake, it really grabs those fish's attention, and this will help push some water and help imitate that. So I'm just going to wrap this forward up towards the eye of the hook a little bit more. I still got a little bit of room to play with there. And we'll trim that so that it extends past the eye a little bit. Now for a hackle on this, I'm just going to use, if you've got a hackle cape, great. If not, you can get these Wapsi little dry fly mini packs. They're an affordable option if you're not looking to invest into a full cape. I'm just going to use size small in this and in the color brown. I'll tie that in by the butt. And we'll make a few wraps over top of that thread here. If it grabs a couple of strands of deer hair and brings them onto the bottom, it's not the end of the world. We'll trim those off at the end. So a couple of wraps to secure that. We'll trim off that little piece of hackle, or the hackle tip, and we're just going to whip finish underneath that deer hair at the eye of the hook. Trim that off. Like I said, I got a few strays on the bottom I want to trim away here just to get that profile. And there you have a very popular, very effective sedge pattern for our local still waters. So like I said, when these things are skittering across the lake, usually at dusk, we see them quite often, or even at your campsite at the end of the night, you'll see these things. They kind of go crazy for the lantern. They'll find a way in those things. So if you see that happening, great time to throw this pattern. Those fish go nuts for these things. They will hit them hard. So you definitely want to upsize your tippet a little bit. Grease them up with your favorite floatant as well. If you want this pattern to ride a little bit lower in the water, you can trim that hackle off the bottom. I like to leave mine just like that. If I don't like how it sits on the water, then I'll definitely trim that bottom hackle just so that it rides a little bit lower and can push a little bit water if I find that it needs it. Again, I always find it's a little bit easier to make a modification like this on the lake if need be. Just like when I do my leeches and stuff like that, if I can pick out some material if I need to, it's easier to do that than it is to add something while I'm there. So I hope you guys find this useful. Great addition into the box as we kind of get into a little bit further into the still water season. Like I said, that is an awesome, awesome dry fly to have, and those fish just go nuts for them. So give that one a try. Really, really good pattern to have. I think you guys will enjoy seeing the massive takes that you can get on these big sedge patterns. So hope you guys find this video useful. Like always, I'll have all the materials linked in the description below. Hit that subscribe button and share with your friends. Always check us out online, www.c-run.com. Thanks again for watching, everybody.